This is Audible.
Something Like Summer, written by J. Bell, narrated by Kevin R. Free at Brickshop Audio, Inc. Part 1. Houston, 1996. Chapter 1. This is not a coming-out story. I put all that behind me 2 years ago at the tender young age of 14. I'd known I was gay since I was 12, and my best friend Kevin moved away to Utah. I was heartbroken, which I suppose is considered normal behavior for most kids. After he'd been gone for 2 weeks, I decided to take a Greyhound bus to see him. The guy at the counter wouldn't sell me a ticket, so I tried passing myself off as the kid of a boarding passenger. That didn't go well. The bus driver made me get off, and the station manager called my parents. Their reaction to my little plan is what tipped me off that my feelings for Kevin went way beyond the norm. Well, that and how I got a hard-on every time I thought of him. Ben's fingers hesitated above the keyboard of his laptop as he reread what he had just written. He took a deep breath, the ozone smell of the slowly overheating machine filling his nose before he sighed. Why did it always sound so trite when he tried to write about his life? He wanted to write something that was different and real, but it always ended up sounding like the porn stories in his small stash of magazines. Next time, he swore to write with old-fashioned pen and paper. At least then he could enjoy crumpling the displeasing results before throwing them in a little metal trash can, like they always did on TV. The most Ben could do was to carefully save his document, close the program, and drag the file to the recycle bin. As he right-clicked to empty the bin, he wondered if the problem wasn't that he couldn't write, but that the porn stories in his magazines were just really well written. He was beginning to wish he hadn't deleted it when the clock in the bottom right-hand corner caught his eye. 10 minutes until 7, almost time for Mr. Blue Shoes to go jogging. Ben struggled with himself for a moment. Part of him recognized just how creepy his behavior was. He wasn't sure if it qualified as stalking, but it was dangerously close. But what else was there to do? Writing hadn't worked, and there was nothing on TV but summer reruns. What harm was there in an innocent stroll through the neighborhood? And if he happened to see Mr. Blue Shoes, then so be it. Switching off his laptop, Ben tried to remember the last time he had done this. Was it yesterday? Surely it was the day before. How many times this week already? Since they appeared to be about the same age, Ben was sure that Mr. Blue Shoes would be attending his high school, and he didn't want to be obvious. Being out at school led to enough taunting without the added ridicule of being criminally desperate. Ben slipped on his shoes and quietly closed his bedroom door behind him. The sound of MTV's Mega Summer Beach Party, or whatever they were calling it this year, drifted from the direction of his sister's room. For once, she wasn't hogging the bathroom. Ben rushed across the hall and flipped on the light, knowing that time was running out, that he only had a brief moment to check his appearance. His blonde hair was due for a cut, but was still passable, he decided as he tried to smooth it into shape. His chestnut brown eyes regarded themselves momentarily, making him wish that his parents had bought him the colored contacts he had asked for last Christmas. Green, blue, purple, anything but brown. At least the braces were off now. He smiled wickedly, scanning for any sign of the spinach soufflé his mother had served for dinner. If there were more time, he would have brushed his teeth. Just in case life played out like one of those porn stories. If only. He was happy to see some remnants of sun on his face from camping last weekend, but not as pleased to note the dopey Smashing Pumpkins t-shirt he was wearing, which wasn't his kind of music at all. The shirt had mysteriously turned up in a stack of fresh laundry one day. His sister's boyfriend had left it during one of his nocturnal visits, and once Ben figured that out, he wore it just to torture her. This wearable blackmail was a few sizes too large for him and draped off his ramrod-thin frame like a tent. Ben bit his lip and decided against digging through the hamper for something better. At least this shirt was clean. Flipping the light switch, he took the stairs 2 at a time, landing at the bottom with a thud that was sure to trigger a yell from his mother. He paused, but the only sound he heard was pre-recorded studio laughter. Thank God for the hypnotizing properties of television. Ben slipped out the front door, undetected by all but Wilford, the family dog. The August evening was still bright, but not as much as it had been last month. Ben pondered the symbolism of the earth growing darker with the approach of a new school year as he jogged down the street toward the end of the block. Behind the row of houses here were woods that connected with a large public park. He chose the yard whose owner was least likely to complain and crossed it. With the house and unfenced backyard behind him, he was faced with one of the finest forests in modern suburbia. The mix of pine and cedar trees was disturbed only by a single dirt path that disappeared into their midst. The trail, eternally marred by the crisscrossing grooves left by countless bike riders, snaked back and forth through the trees, causing 10 acres of woods to feel like a limitless wilderness. Ben turned to the right and walked up a slope toward a more civilized path, one paved and dotted with benches and trash cans as it wound its way around a small man-made lake. He scanned the horizon for his quarry. At first he saw no one except for a middle-aged couple walking hand in hand, but then the thump, thump, thump sound of running attracted his attention. There he was, Mr. Blue Shoes. He could more aptly be named Mr. Neon Electric Blue Shoes. Oh, how Ben had searched for a pair of those shoes after seeing them for the first time. Not only did he think they looked awesome, but they would have been a potential conversation starter. "Hey, you have the same crazy shoes that I do." Despite tagging along on all of his mother's shopping trips, he never found them. Ben wasn't even sure what brand they were. Some sort of exotic Italian brand that Mr. Blue Shoes had preferred before moving here to the States, he fantasized. Not that he was necessarily from Italy, of course, but it would explain the deeply tanned skin and jet-black hair. Ben snapped out of his reverie and realized that the object of his desire was jogging directly toward him, and all the while he had been standing there staring. Usually Ben made at least some attempt to act like he was out for some exercise. His muscles froze as he tried to decide what to do. He should probably turn to the right and walk away so as not to appear obvious. He started to do this until he realized that he wouldn't be able to get a look at Mr. Blue Shoes, and so Ben turned back to the front. Unfortunately, his confused brain didn't trigger the muscles needed to actually begin walking. Ben was left standing, just as he had been before, except now he was facing Mr. Blue Shoes, and it was too late to do anything but stare. Lust brushed away any remaining self-consciousness. Ben looked up from the oddly colored shoes, his eyes taking in the black hairs on the finely muscled legs before darting up to check out the package bouncing away behind maroon gym shorts. Not wishing to press his luck, he continued upward to the considerable pecs. The evening wasn't hot enough that he was running shirtless, but the gray tank top was minimal enough to reveal muscular arms with a sexy swirl of black hair under the armpits. Ben looked up at the handsome face, ignoring the sweaty strands of dark hair stuck to the broad forehead or the well-defined cheekbones, choosing instead to look into the silver-gray eyes that haunted his fantasies. He noted with a mix of relief and abhorrence that those eyes were locked onto his t-shirt. His blatant gawking had probably gone unnoticed, but at the price of Mr. Blue Shoes noticing the worst thing about his appearance today. As he jogged past Ben, the silver eyes rose to meet his. Mr. Blue Shoes raised his eyebrows and nodded in a way that unmistakably said, "Cool," before flashing a smile. And then he was gone, followed a second later by a blast of sweaty, musky air. Ben inhaled this scent and, after a dramatic moment of euphoria, found the strength to continue walking. He sauntered around the park before heading home, feeling as if he had just gotten back from a dream date. He realized it was probably pathetic, but he didn't care at this point. The hottest guy in the world had just acknowledged him, and all